I wake up every morning and I draw a circle and a triangle and a square.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jeff Heilman Project podcast. I'm your co-host, Jessica Heilman, with our host here, Jeff Heilman.
What's going on,
The
everybody?
newly shaved, clean-skinned, clear-bearded.
Yes.
What brought on this decision to?
I just needed a change.
Well, it looks good.
Thanks. I have not seen my face in a year, and I'm looking at my skin, and it's like I look so old without a beard.
It's funny you say that because I feel like you shaved and exfoliated, because that's what shaving does for your face is it exfoliates
effectively exfoliating all
I
the
see
skin.
no wrinkles. I see just baby skin, just baby brand new skin
Jeez.
underneath there.
I feel like an old man.
Aw. Well,
I
as
don't feel like an old man. I
an
feel like I look
old
like
man who is extremely productive and has learned how to become productive over time. That's exactly what we're going to be talking about on today's podcast, is what Andrew
Nice
so
segue, by the way.
affectionately has titled The Secret to Productivity. I don't know necessarily that we have any secrets, but we can share with you what we have learned. And the most interesting thing, I think, in the last 30 years that I've learned about being productive is how most productive people actually do the least amount of things, because it's all about delegation and being able to recognize, to outsource and source your weaknesses and focus on your strengths. Brian Tracy has written numerous books about productivity and about how to stay focused in order to get the maximum yield. And I think that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about productivity, is maximum amount of yield with the minimal amount of effort. What would you have to say, Jeff, if you had somebody asking you what the secret to productivity is?
I think that the secret to productivity is leverage. Archimedes, who I'm sure he was Greek because his name's Archimedes.
Wasn't Jack.
Archimedes said one time, "Give me a fulcrum and a lever long enough, and I would move the world." It has to do with leverage. It has to do with the fact that if I've got a stick that's, 40 feet long and a lever that I can provide leverage against, some form of triangle-shaped rock or a round rock, and I can put enough weight on that, if the stick doesn't break, you can move a huge boulder that is so heavy that you couldn't lift it yourself, you couldn't roll it. But if you can apply leverage to it, you can move that boulder. So I think the great secret to productivity is leverage.
I think that it's a good point that you bring up about the fulcrum, because I think immediately about the growing up. I've lived in two states, California and the Pacific Northwest. And when you lived in Pacific Northwest in Oregon, there's a lot of lumberjack and timber culture. And you see the evolution of like the axe for clearing the forest to the double-edged saw. And how when you allow, as a builder myself, when you allow the teeth to do the work, it's a lot less work at trying to get that tree cut down. And so I think that the tools that we use are as important, if not more so even, than than what we're actually focused on doing. So maybe if you could talk to us for a minute about the tools.
Let's talk about what those tools
the
actually
tools
are.
that you use in order to leverage your productivity.
In his book, How to Be Rich, not How to Get Rich, but How to Be Rich, by J. Paul Getty, Getty said, "I'd rather have 1% of 100 man's efforts than 100% of my own." Mm-hmm. And I always thought about that. I'm like, well, 100% of your own's got to be pretty good. But 1% of 100 men's efforts gives you scale. It gives you leverage. So if we look at the first tier of the pyramid of leverage, it's labor. And a use case for labor would be the pyramids. The Egyptians built the pyramids with servant labor, slave labor. The pyramids were mathematically precise. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say perfect, but they were mathematically very precise.
Yeah.
Very precise. Way more precise than you would imagine. I mean, these blocks, thousands and thousands of blocks that are 4,000 to 8,000 pounds apiece, and they're perfectly within a 32nd of an inch across hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of yards, and they're within a 32nd of an inch of accuracy. Wackadoodle, right? To be doing that with no modern day tools. Labor built the pyramids, and then the second tier above that first tier of labor is when you start to move from thousands of years ago to hundreds of years ago, you start to look at the concept of interest-bearing accounts and double entry accounting, which was the leverage of the Medici family when they started doing the first concept of European banks, to where I can gain leverage from borrowed capital or lent capital. So if you have $1,000 and you lend that $1,000 at 10% interest, every year you'll get $100 in interest, or you'll get an accumulation of $100 by the time the loan is paid back. You'll get $100 per year of interest for that loan to be borrowed. And there's amortization schedules that you can use, calculate. I don't know if that uses calculus, but it's amortization schedules that show the repayment of a loan in 5 years or 10 years or what have you. But effectively, you would have a rate of interest, and that rate of interest would be leverage on the capital. And that's pretty much what people did. Labor for the thousands of years and capital for the hundreds of years. And then we start to see with the Industrial Revolution the concept of economies of scale. As Naval Ravikant talks about it, the next tier of leverage is what he calls code, software code, right? Your cost to build software code is X, but your cost of repeating the usefulness of software code is 0. And so that code then ends up going and becoming a worker bee for you, going and granting wishes, as my former manager, Orrin Michaels, used to say. Apps grant wishes. Well, if apps are granting wishes that people will pay for, then the applications become leverage. And our family's enjoyed a lifestyle in the top 2 to 3% income bracket in the richest country in the history of the universe, because I've sold software code. So I've had leverage from labor, I've had leverage from capital, I've had leverage from software code itself. And then you have a fourth area, which really was controlled through the media companies for the last 100 years. But in the last 7 to 10 years, social media and platforms available for people to create content have allowed content to be a form of leverage. And some people could say, well, content's not really a form of leverage. Well, Kylie Jenner's bank account begs to differ. Here you have a young lady who, for the most part, has no marketable skills. She's beautiful, but she doesn't have an OnlyFans account. She's not a model, modeling clothes necessarily for anybody. But what she does do is she creates content. And that content through these platforms has captured hundreds of millions and billions of far wealthier than any of the Kardashians. All the rest of them combined don't even add a drop in the bucket to Kylie Jenner. And why is that? She actually leveraged all four. Mm-hmm. And that's what we see in billionaires. Kylie Jenner created content which allowed her to have access to millions, hundreds of millions of subscribers. She also uses software code, which is the platform and the social media that's allowed her to reach those people with said content. She's used software code in the form of these social media platforms. She's got labor that comes together through contract manufacturing in order to make it possible for her to manufacture lip balm and eyeshadow and foundation and cover up and all this stuff. Do they even call it cover up anymore? I guess probably not. Concealer, that's right. And then she leverages the capital of these contract manufacturers in order to put all four of these together in the pyramid. And she made $1 billion before she was 25 years old. That, to me, is an example of productivity as a function of leverage.
What is some tools that, let's say you're not in a business, but you want to be more productive? I use, I'm a big fan of Sheets, like Google Sheets. I use my worksheets. I know that you've had a ongoing relationship, our whole marriage, with Microsoft the spreadsheets that you've used and continued to use to
Yeah, I use Google Sheets a lot.
Google Sheets
but yeah.
and so Microsoft Word. Are there any things or any little tips that you could do to help somebody to just feel like even feel like they're being more productive or more, getting more things done throughout the day?
I would think in terms of compounding. If somebody wanted to be productive, I would say, think about how productive you are right now and where that came from. And you know how to read, you know basic math, you know how to move around, drive a car. These are all basic types of things. But what if you could actually improve your own capacity to perform beyond where you are right now? So if we take my own life as an example, not necessarily a good one or the best one, but in the beginning, I could work a retail job. And I knew how to work a cash register, and I made about $8 an hour in auto parts sales. Next thing from that was barcode scanners, basically auto parts with a cable attached to it. And then it was laptops and desktops. And then it was network security edge software. And then it was routers and switches. And then it was data center items and storage. And then it was enterprise app integration, professional services, and API management and security. And then it was analytics. And then it was back office, heavier back office applications like supply chain and idealization and commercialization, and procure to pay and record to report and order to cash and all these things that Oracle did. And now it's specialized tax automation software for electronic invoice. You learn these things. You learn how to do more and more stuff. And the truth is anybody could learn how to do these things. It's not hard. It takes a little bit of effort and a little bit of focus.
I've had this formula that I've attempted to live by in talking about compounding, and it's moment. So if you take MX, moment but MX, so M times MF equals GL. And what it stands for is moment. M stands for moment, by moment faith, MF, equals a glorified life. Because I truly believe that if we live moment by moment in faith, if we live moment by moment and don't live in the past and don't live in the future, but are present, then those present decisions end up magnified and compounding into living a glorified life. And so when we look at being productive and what does it mean to be productive, for example, if it's 4:22 in the afternoon, it's not 4:21 and it's not 4:23. What are we doing right now in this moment to be the most present, to be the most productive? Are we using our time to its best at that any given point in time? And as I continue to assess and reassess throughout the day, and looking at the clock periodically and going, well, it's 12:15. Am I doing am I doing the most productive thing for this moment right now? Am I doing the best thing for me? It could be taking a nap. It could be, start getting dinner started.
Naps are productive.
It could be going for a walk. But when we look at our time that we've been given and let it be as present as possible, then we can clearly and I think most effectively be productive because we're in the present. And I don't know anybody who has lived in the past in their mentality and with their belief system that has been productive. And I've never known anybody to live in the future and have that future state of mind only and be productive because, there's that, what's that saying? So heavenly minded that you're no earthly good, or so,
Sure.
You're so locked in the future that you're missing the present and where you are standing at the moment. And it's so easy. It's very easy to fall when we're tired into the past and just remunerate over all of the things that we've done in the past. And it's fairly easy to get lost in the optimistic hopes for the future that we forget that, what we're doing right now and the people in front of us and where we're at right now. This is the moment that's compounding. We are in the compounding moment right now, and we need to, as we continue to make those decisions in the moment, it will build up and it will. Think about if you took every second or every minute of your day and just made the best decision for that minute. In a year, what would your year look like?
Yeah,
in 2
it's
years,
totally
in
gonna
10
compound.
years, in 20 years, what is your life going to look like by having made the decision that was the most productive for that moment or the best good that you could do in that moment?
Yeah. And if somebody were to say, let's take, we take I started with the macro. I always do. And I should start with something simple. People are like, I don't need to hire 1,000 people to build a pyramid. Like, let's do something a little simpler. So what I would ask you to do is take out a piece of paper, if you haven't already, and draw a triangle.
With a pen that has ink that
with
works.
A pen that preferably with ink or charcoal or smoke signal, something, and draw a triangle and think of like, what's the there's a gal online, I'll put a link in the bio, who just wrote a book called Triple Compounding for Dummies. And what she talks about is that the Warren Buffetts, the whatever his guy with the financial thing, the piece,
Dave Ramsey.
I can never remember that guy's name, and I don't know why. They teach one method, but they don't actually do it with their own money. That's her premise. And so what they do is what's called what she calls triple compounding. And the triple compounding is this: if you just buy index funds with your job, in 45 years you'll have enough money to maybe live on $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month. It's not a good strategy, and it doesn't, like, it's better than nothing, but is it really? Because you're lying to yourself the entire time, because you'll never be rich. You'll be, in the top 5% maybe, but not the top 1 or 2%. If what you want to do is be rich and have the lifeblood to be able to go and travel and use the money while you're still alive. So what these wealthy people actually do, she proposes, is a concept of triple compounding. And here's the 3 strategies. Number 1, invest in yourself with an attitude of service. Books, tapes, seminars, CDs, DVDs, online courses, online communities, mentorship programs, one-on-one coaching, advisory boards, these types of things, right? Things that are going to help you. And by the way, ChatGPT is the best possible self-improvement, self-help, and personal growth tool I have ever seen in my entire life. I don't even know what number 2 is. I should have just mentioned that by itself, because you can literally say, I want to make $1 million, or I want to learn how to build an airplane, or I want to sail, or I want to do whatever. And it will prompt you. You prompt it, but it actually prompts you to figure out what you need to do to grow into the person that you could become that would command the money or what have you. So the first thing is invest in a self who serves. When we invest in ourself who serves, that begins compounding, because the skills that you have, the articulation, the people skills. I never did a podcast before. But the crazy thing is all I did was invest in myself and read and read and read and read and read and read for thousands and thousands and thousands of hours, and articulate and work on frameworks and work on yellow pads and work on triangles and all these different ideas. And now I just sit down on a podcast. Now, granted, it's not like 1 billion people are watching me, but I sit down on this podcast.
Not yet.
And you ask me questions and I just open my mouth and stuff comes out. That's the compounding of those skills from decades and decades and decades of reading and studying and trying to figure out frameworks and things by investing in myself. So the first step of triple compounding is to invest in a self who serves. The second step of triple compounding is to invest in systems which scale. And that has to do with standard operating procedures, Kanban, dashboards, Wu-Wei, burn down charts, the CRM systems, even to the point where I have a 1-1.A.1 algorithm header that I put on the front end of all of the deals that I'm working in Salesforce, so that I can work hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of deals. And the header on the front end auto sorts based on the biggest deals that are the closest to closing, that require the least amount of effort. Those float to the top. And that system allows me to really just work on a handful of things that matter and are going to move closer. And it's part of why I was the top sales rep last year out of 200 and something reps, even though it was my first full fiscal year there. And somebody could say, well, you had all the best accounts. Well, other people had those accounts before I did, and they didn't produce nearly what they produced during the year that they were in my tutelage. So is that economic prowess? Perhaps. Is it market conditions? Perhaps. Did I have a lot of help? Yeah, I had a lot of help. But I also created a lot of enemies from people who got pissed off because I didn't do the stupid stuff that they wanted me to do. I thought it was stupid. It didn't close business. So if it's not closing business, it's stupid to me because I'm in sales. My job is to close business. I'm not saying they're stupid. I'm simply saying I didn't want to do stuff that was stupid. And I have systems in place that allow me to say no to almost everything. And now that I've got the results, I'm not saying this thing to boast or to brag, but it's like, look, if you're focused on pure signal of just the absolute minimum viable product of what you're going to do, you're still not going to be very good, but at least you're going to be focused on something that moves the needle on progress. And that requires systems in order to do that. So that's step number 2. I'll pause for step number 3. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, if we can double click and double down on the saying no. I think productive people know when to say no to things that...
Yeah, and productive people don't go around saying, hey, I'm going to say no to this, no to this, no to this. No, they're saying, I already said yes to this.
Yeah.
And unless there's something that's more important than the thing that I'm already focused on doing, the answer is automatically no.
Yeah, because that tends to be, I feel, a lot of people's struggle is saying yes to so many things that it diverts all of their attention. And now they are risking their own personal productivity in the attempt to do something nice for somebody else or to oblige somebody else. And so
people that say no to stuff. Successful people that say no to stuff. People that are lazy just say no to everything. People who are really successful say no to almost everything, and they have systems in place that allows them to define what they're going to say yes to. So you don't get rid of the noise by turning the volume down on the noise. You get rid of the noise by turning your ears up on what's actually.
What was the third point that you were going to make out of this?
So first point is invest in self who serves. Second point is invest in systems that scale. Case in point, theory of constraint. That's Elon Musk's one. You've heard me talk about that on several podcasts. I wake up every morning and I draw a circle and a triangle and a square. The circle is a target on the far hand right. That represents my goal. The triangle represents the constraint, a blocker, something that you try to drive over, and it would be a speed bump, if you will. That represents the biggest constraint. This is not the same as Gary Keller's book, The One Thing. Gary Keller's book, The One Thing, which I've run ChatGPT analytics against this, and I've put a mock board of directors together, which I know is a little weird, a little Napoleon Hill-ish, but I put a mock board of directors together, and I ran analytics against my use of constraint theory and pure signal versus Gary Keller, who made $1 billion building Remax real estate. The One Thing, and mine is better. Mine is better, and it is what Elon Musk does and what Da Vinci did and what Jobs did and what Picasso did. No offense to Gary Keller, because thank God he wrote the book and he got me thinking along these lines of constraint theory. But effectively, the one thing with Gary Keller is find the one thing that makes everything else easier or unnecessary. That's a nice phrase. It's a nice thought, right? The problem with it is, and anybody who's a physics major who understands first principles is going to look at that and go, I see the flaw with that. What's the flaw with the one thing that makes everything else easier or unnecessary? The flaw is that there is no one thing that makes everything easier or everything unnecessary. There could be 100 of those. So when I look at constraint theory, the question I'm asking myself is, what is the largest constraint that is keeping me from getting to my goal? And I allow my subconscious mind to play king of the mountain with checkers to figure out what that single thing is. And as I build businesses and systems and scale up, I will actually be able to use card games. I'll be able to use Fibonacci sequences. I'll be able to use third parties and other people pushing and advising to prove that I am not wrong, or we are not wrong about whatever we decide collectively is the largest constraint at any given point in time. And it will be metrics based versus a nice to have thought. So a little diatribe there. And yeah, am I trying to show off how smart I am? No, I'm trying to say Gary Keller made $1 billion selling real estate, and he uses the one thing. Elon Musk made $400 billion building 8 companies using constraint theory and pure signal.
And in easy to understand, for me, we read a really great book by R.G. Letourneau, and he was well known.
The Turnipole. Yeah.
He was well known in engineering and in taking big, heavy equipment like bobcats and tractors and engineering mechanics and saying and looking at it in his mind's eye as an engineer and just asking the question, what if we took away everything that wasn't necessary in this vehicle? Could we make it lighter? Could we make it more mobile? Could we make it easier to assemble in war zones where we need to clear the field in order to let the airplanes land? And so when you take your life and you look at it, and as we kind of close, maybe this will be a very easy way of kind of reorganizing your day or structuring what you're doing. Look at your life and see if there's anything that could be removed from it. If you took an engineer's eye and an upward glance down, looking down at your day and looking down at your life, is there anything that you're doing that if you removed that from your day, it would free up time, it would free up space, it would give you more ability to be more creative, more productive, because you're not, spending an extra 30 minutes commuting back and forth when somebody else could do that drive for you, or your kid could get a bike and they could take themselves to school or whatever it is. And see if you can engineer your life to run smoother, to run more mobile, to be able to be more flexible, by just removing the noise, by doing what Jeff's talking about, getting a clear signal, a pure signal for the things that only you can do. Because there's probably a lot of things in your day and in your life that other people could do for you or do instead of you, that if you only focused on the things that only you could do at any given moment, what would that day look like? What would that week look like? And how would that month look? There's probably a lot of TPS reports that you're doing that you could hand off to somebody else. There's probably a lot of errands that you're running that you could consolidate and just do your shopping one day a week. Or for me, for example, I'll do my online shopping at Target or Safeway, some store that you could do a drive up and then they bring the groceries out to you, so that I shop from home when I'm relaxed. I order everything according to my list. I don't overspend because I'm not going inside and doing impulse buying. I pull up my car, they bring out all the groceries to the car. I'm saving time, I'm saving money, and I'm being a lot more productive doing it once a week or once every 3 or 4 days than going and running to the store every 20 minutes because I forgot something, or being a looky-loo around the store, because we've got things to do, places to go.
That's right. And there's one more thing I don't want to leave people hanging. The third aspect, so the first aspect is invest in self who serves, and that will compound. The second is invest in systems that scale, whether it's constraint theory or Kanban or standard operating procedures, et cetera. And then third is stuff that pays. And that could be laundromats. It could be a car that you lease out on Turo. It could be a duplex. It could be stocks. It could be tax-deferred municipal bonds. It could be a piece of a company. But you want to take the cash flow that you're making from the systems and the businesses that you're running and roll that into assets, apartment buildings, duplexes, et cetera. That's really the trifecta, is invest what little money you may have or start with into yourself so that your own skills improve. Eventually, it'll get to the point where you're making enough money from those skills that you don't need to invest much discretionary income into those. Then you want to invest those into cash flow producing systems or side hustles in addition to your job, or systems for your job that make things automate and apply constraint theory. And then from that, you will get leveraged income coming in, which turns free cash flow can then turn into, with other leverage of other capital, apartment buildings, commercial buildings, et cetera. And most of the folks that I know who are wealthy have some form of cash flow producing asset in the form of a business that they own or real estate where somebody's paying a lease payment, or apartment buildings. That's the people I know that have boats and cars and houses that they don't have to get up and go to work to pay for. Have those things as that trifecta of leverage. So that's the Jeff Heilman Project for this week, everybody. And I appreciate
Thank you.
You being with us. And hopefully some of the things that we've talked about today will help you ask yourself the question, most importantly, what kind of person, rather than what do I need to do to be successful? It's more, who do I need to be in order to know that I'm the person that will do the things automatically that will make me successful? Thanks so much for being with us, and hope you have a great rest of your week.
Have a productive
Have a
rest of
productive
your
week.
month.
Thanks. Bye.